Good day, everyone. Today I will discuss about hazards in the Philippines. First, hazards. Hazards may be categorized into natural or anthropogenic or man-made. Okay, let us define first what is natural hazards. Natural hazards is a climate and weather-related hazards such as typhoons and droughts as well as geophysical hazards. Example, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis. As you can see on the pictures, that there are some examples of natural hazards, right? Okay. How about anthropogenic hazards? So based on the definition, anthropogenic or man-made hazards include deforestation, mining, and climate change. So it means that anthropogenic hazards is made by human. So that is what we call the human exploitation. So if we do not know how to handle or to handle care our environment, this will be the result of uh, activities that we done. So that is what we call anthropogenic hazards. Okay, let us define differ what is natural hazards. So, a natural hazard is defined as a natural process or event that is potentially damaging in that it may result in loss of life or injury, loss of property, socioeconomic destruction, of environmental degradation. So it means that natural hazard is naturally occurred in our environment. It it can be disadvantage or disadvantage to us. So when we focus on the definitions, the event that is potentially damaging, so it means it could damage our property or our environment. So climate and weather-related hazards in particular refer to the direct and indirect effects of observed changes and or projected deviations from present-day condition of natural climate events, so such as increases and decreases in precipitation and temperature, and impact of changes in the frequencies and occurrences of extreme weather or climate events such as tropical cyclones, droughts, and El Nino and La Nina events. So it means that natural hazards is there are a lot of natural hazards uh, we may experience, right? Even today, right? So these are natural hazards are we always experience because of some human activities like illegal logging, mining, right? So these are the examples of natural hazards. So tropical cyclones, though nowadays we experience the tropical cyclones or in our or Baguio, right? Droughts is we experience droughts during the summer season. So there is a severe drought. So when we say severe droughts, that is what we call El Nino. So double-legged ang tubig yung tara during El Nino. And when we say La Nina events, that is the severe uh, precipitations in during the rainy seasons or even not in rainy seasons. So there are severe uh, rainfall, severe uh, precipitation. So the term that is precipitations in the meteorological terms. Next. So under the natural hazards, there are three types of hazards. First, geophysical hazards. So when we say geophysical hazards, yeah, geophysical hazards events are destructive phenomena. However, these are part of a normal functioning of our dynamic planet. So it means that these are normal activities in our environment. So these so-called hazards are due to naturally occurring process in the Earth's interior. So it means that the geophysical hazards is the normal movement of our planet. So what are they? So let us define. So there are four hazards are considered under this category. What are they? First, earthquakes. Second, earthquake-induced landslides. So it means after earthquakes, there is several landslides here in our environment, right? Tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. So these four hazards are interconnected to each other. So it means if there is a one hazards that we experience, so some of the three hazards are also experienced in some areas or some part of our planet. Okay, so based on the sources of data for these hazards include the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, in short, PHIVOLCS, and the Earthquake and Natural Resource Atlas of the Philippines of 1998. So these are our sources. So next, earthquakes. So what is earthquakes? Earthquakes is a natural process that is hazardous is the movement of lithospheric plates, the solid crust, and the few kilometers of the upper mantle, which causes the tectonic earthquakes. So when we go back in our earth science during our high schools, so when we say earthquakes, that is the movement of tectonic plates in the lithosphere. So when we say the movement of lithosphere, what is that? So in earth science, there are three types of tectonic plate movements, right? So that is what we call earthquakes, the movement of the lithosphere and the plates and the lithosphere in the upper mantle. So what uh, what is the causes of earthquakes, or what is the cause of earthquakes? So naturally, earthquakes comes from the volcanic eruptions or the eruption of the uh, volcanics or the vents. There are several vents in under the oceans, right? So there is several earthquakes that occurred, but uh, uh, we cannot observe that in the continental area. But in some places under the ocean, there is some volcanic activities and there are several earthquakes. So that there is a changes in the landforms. No, we do not expect that, but naturally we experience that. So based on the U.S. Geological Survey defines the term earthquake as both sudden slip on a fault and the resulting ground shaking and radiated seismic energy caused by the slip or the volcanic or magnetic activity or other sudden stress changes in the earth. Example, event by man-made explosions. So these are the some reasons of the movements of our lithosphere. That is the explosions, using the explosive devices or the explosive chemicals, especially in mining, in creating a tunnel, making infrastructure under the ground. So that are the activities of human that can cause also an earthquake. Okay. So the second types of natural hazards is hydrometeorological hazard. So what is hydrometeorological hazard? First, we have typhoon. An typhoon is an extremely large, powerful, and destructive storm that occurs especially in the region of the Philippines or the China Sea. So we always experience typhoons, right? Because we are facing the Pacific Ocean. Second, thunderstorm. is a weather condition generally characterized by heavy rain, thunder, and lightning, and the possibility of tornado. So that is what we call thunderstorm. How about flash flood? Flash flood is a local flood of short duration, generally resulting from heavy rainfall in the immediate vicinity. So when we say flash flood, there is a huge amount of water running in a certain place in a short period of time. That is what we call the flash flood. Kumbaga, kung sa kinaraiya, lagi-lagi. So that is what we call the flash flood. How about flood? Flood is generally referred to as the running and overlying of water on land that are not ordinarily covered by it. So it means that when we say flood, that is the running or overlying water on the land surfaces. So actually, it is not ordinary covered by the water. So that is what we call the flood. So for example, uh, sa city, there is flood during the heavy rain. So because city is not covered by water, so we considered or we experienced flood because uh, naturally city is not covered of water. So that's why we say that there is a flood. Okay. Next, storm surge. Storm surge is escalating seawater to the coast above normal sea level. So it means when we say storm surge, that is the escalating of seawater in the coastal area. So it means there is uh, um, more water moving on the coastal areas or in the near places on the coastal areas. Next, El Nino. A flow of unusually warm water along the western coast of South America that causes many changes in weather in other places. So it means uh, El Nino is warm water along the western coast of South America that causes many changes in weather. So that is when we say El Nino, when we experience El Nino, there is a severe evaporation. When we say severe evaporation, so the water on the ground will evaporate because of that phenomena. Okay. Next, La Nina. So when we say La Nina is a climate pattern that describes the cooling of surface ocean waters along the tropical west coast of South America. La Nina is considered to be counterpart to El Nino, which is characterized by unusually warm ocean temperatures in the equatorial region of the Pacific Ocean. So when we say La Nina, there is severe rainfalls or rainy days in the region. So it means there are heavy rains, there are heavy precipitations, there are large of water flow on the ground. There's a lot of water in the dam. That is why we experience La Nina. There is more water. It creates more water in the specific region. If we experience La Nina. Third, under the natural hazards, there is what we call biological hazards. So biological hazards is a microorganisms or a large and diverse group of organisms that exist as a single cells or cell cluster by Brock and Madjikan, 1998. The microbial cells are thus distinct from the cells of animals and plants. So it means distinct, they are different from other cells, which are unable to live alone in nature but can exist only as a part of multicellular organisms. So they cannot live alone in nature. So it means They cannot live alone in the environment, but they can live in uh, some organisms. So some of some of viruses are living in a certain host so that they could multiply and uh, they could still live longer. So their life is depend on their host. That is for viruses. And very few areas on the surface of this planet do not support microbial life because microorganisms have an outstanding range of metabolic and energy yielding abilities, and many can exist under conditions that are lethal to other life forms. So, in science, there are different types of microbes or bacteria that live in the extreme environment. That is what we call the extreme environment because some of organisms cannot live there. So that's why they can only live there because they are what we call the extremophiles organisms. So when we say extremophiles, they are organisms that can live in extreme environment. So there are four broad classes of microorganisms that can interact with humans are bacteria, fungi, viruses, and protozoa. So nowadays we experience pandemic, right? So pandemic is what is the cause of pandemic today? So we experience pandemic because of viruses. So a coronavirus is one kind of virus that undergo mutations in order to live. So that is the one characteristics of virus. So they undergo mutations in order to live longer because there is a changes in environment. So in order to live in a certain environment or in a changes in the particular environment, they need to mutate. So that's why there is what we call the alpha, beta, and delta, right? So there are different types of viruses. So that's why we name that depend on their origin. First, we have alpha. So alpha is the first virus that we discovered. So that's why that is they undergo mutations. They are unique in order to live, right? They are hazardous to workers due to their wide distribution in the working environment. So that's why uh, uh, this time we experience pandemic because all throughout the world experience this coronavirus. That's why this is called pandemic because worldwide. So we experience worldwide. Okay. Next, biological hazards. There are three major sources of such microbes. So there are three major sources of microbes. First, those arising from microbial decomposition of various substrates associated with particular occupation. Example, the moldy hay leading to hypersensitivity pneumonitis. So when we say the decomposition of various substrates, so for example, there is what we call the decomposition of meat, decomposition of plants, decomposition of foods. So so when we say the composition is there is what we call decomposers in order to decompose certain organic materials, right? So in that process of decompositions, there is microbes and microbials in order to decompose, which could lead to some various illness in human and also in animals, right? So, like in moldy hay, it could leading to hypersensitivity pneumonitis. So when we say hypersensitivity pneumonitis, there is what we call the uh, allergy reaction in your respiratory or respiratory disorders could lead to respiratory disorders. Next, those associated with certain types of environment, example, bacteria and water in water supply. So in water supplies, no, of some of community experience this kind of scenario, like diarrhea. So diarrhea is caused by bacteria. Those stemming from infective individuals harboring a particular pathogen. Examples, tuberculosis. So, for example, in human, if the human has tuberculosis, it means I, uh, this kind of human is harboring a particular pathogen. When we say harboring, is keeping pathogen. Pathogen is a deadly bacteria. Bacteria or any microbes in our environment. So it means tuberculosis is our term that is makaralaton in Kinaraya or communicable in English. Okay. Okay. The second hazards is anthropogenic or technological hazards. So when we say anthropogenic and technological hazards, these are man-made hazards which include deforestation, mining, and climate change. So there are some examples posted in our slides. So one of these is deforestation, mining, and climate change. So in the climate change is a picture of a glacier, which is there is a melting of glacier in the Antarctic region, in Antarctica or in the Arctic region in our planet. So it means there is a there is a lot of carbon footprints or carbon deposits in our atmosphere. So the carbon is one reason why we experience the too much heat during the sunny day or during the daytime. Okay. Environmental degradation. So when we say environmental degradation is one of the hazard, environmental degradation has hugely contributed the increasing natural disaster, occurrence in the Philippines, demographic growth, and poor land use planning have led to the massive depletion of natural resources and destruction of the environment. Flash flooding, landslides, and drought have increased in the past 2 decades as a result of declining forest cover. Certain areas that have substantially lost their forest cover are also more exposed to typhoons. So that is the environmental degradations. So what is the role of the government agencies during disasters and calamity operations? Since the DND and the AFE possess the capability to react to natural calamities, with the DND's unique nature of organization and network of troops and assets their positions, an inter-agency plan headed by the DNE was organized specifically to put into the realization on action-oriented civil defense plan with the creation of the NDCC. So first, the Secretary of the LG is responsible for the establishment of operation centers of all local government. The Secretary of Education, Culture and Sport is tasked with organizing the disaster control and reaction teams in large building for commercial and reaction purposes. The Department of Trade and Industry Secretary is responsible for the organization of disaster control and reaction teams in large building for commercial and reaction purposes. And the Secretary of the Department of Social Welfare and Development is tasked with extending emergency relief, assistance, and social services victim to strategy. So it means, in short, that in the ILG, the function of the ILG is focuses on the operation centers of all local government units. It focuses only on the local government units, while the Secretary of Education or the Department of Education is the organizing the disaster control. They are organizing disaster control because they are uh, they are undergo training in different types of uh, disaster risk reduction management. That's it. So when I say in Department of Trade, Industry, or in the TI, they are organization disaster control reaction team. They are focuses on the commercial in the businesses. They are only focuses on commercial on how to manage, on how to prevent this disaster so that we can minimize uh, our what we call that in Kinaya, what we call that the Perdi or Lugi. So during disaster, that is why DTI is responsible for that. And Secretary Department for Social Welfare is focuses on the giving assistance during pandemics. So they are tasked to uh, give ayuda in our fellow Filipinos, right? Okay. Role of the government agencies. We already discussed it. So, during disaster operations, all other disasters coordinating councils make available their facilities and expertise relative to the effective implementation of the council's mission. So, during disaster, uh, naturally, or actually, or supposedly, the team of rescue, this municipal risk reduction management office, they will prepare their equipments for the certain disaster. For example, during flash flood or during storm or storm surge, they prepare the rubber board, their like jacket, the oxygens, and other equipments that they could use during the retrieval operations. Retrieval operations, the rescue operations, and other operations that uh, under their under their office. Okay. What is the role of the youth during natural calamities and man-made man-made disorders? So these are the activities or the the actions that the youth in our community could execute or they could offer to their fellow uh, to the other constituents of the certain barangay. All able-bodied young citizens of the land should get themselves involved in civic actions in the community where he lives and should be ready to render assistance anywhere and anytime. Their services are needed. More than anything else, it is everybody's moral obligation to assist his countrymen in distress. So it means that we are obliged or we are moral obliged to render our service in our fellow countrymen during disasters or we experience disasters in our country. Okay? So in times of the natural calamities or man-made disorders, the youth or ROTC cadets and cadets should be willing and ready to render direct assistance to calamity victims in any of the following areas. So first, so these are the the following areas where the cadets should be uh, render their service or their services. First, sorting, loading, and distribution of relief goods. Administering the first aid treatment on victims. Third, comforting and assisting in their rehabilitations. And fourth, disseminating information to concerned individual, surveying of affected families and areas, and monitoring and liaising work. So those are the activities that should the cadets could be offered in our community or in our countrymen. And lastly, the civic action activities like environmental and ecological protection. So when we say ecological and ecological protections, we conducted the coastal cleanup, the clean and green program. So those are the programs that we implement in protecting our environment and ecological protections programs or activities rather. So next, river and watershed control projects. So river and watershed control projects. So we have a program here is for example like for tree planting activities or planting mangroves in the coastal areas in uh, reforestations, yeah, that is for to restore our watershed. So if there are a lot of trees, there is also a water. Okay, tree planting and forest fire control. So I mentioned a while ago that tree planting and forest fire control is one of the programs uh, that we could implement to protect our watershed and our rivers and other water resources in our environment. Okay, next. Likewise, the concerned youth development agencies should establish coordination and linkages to be set up before, during, and after every disaster by using the NDCC operational model. The leadership in the youth development agencies, the corps of officers or coordinators, in order to succeed in their chosen endeavor, should. So, these are the NDCC operational model. First, plan the chosen activities ahead of long time before any calamity strikes. Join, participate in training exercise on disasters and relief operations. B. See to it that resources that are available could meet the needs of the chosen activities. So we need to consider the availability of our resources. So in order to avoid shortage of giving relief, right? C. Coordinate all activities properly with the city, provincial, and municipal disaster coordinate councils. So we need to coordinate the other branch of our government, such as the LGU, from provincial rather, from provincial, LGU, to barangay level, or for the no to avoid the misunderstanding or miscommunications of that kind of parties. D. Organize the corps into various brigade or cadre. Assign the with uh, members responsibilities which they feel they can properly handle. Confidence in what is one is doing is the key to success. So, the confidence in what is one is doing is the key to success. So, it means that so there is a unity in the team. So we need to know what is our goals. So we focus only on our goal, right? So during the disasters, we need to focus on what do we do because no to avoid accidents, to avoid tragedy. So those are things that we may not uh, uh, we may not wish to do or wish to experience, but we can avoid it. So we can handle the situations manageably. E. Work as a team. Coordinate efforts with other organizations, NGO, PO, LGU, or religious organizations. So we need to work as a team and coordinate to other uh, communities in our uh, other group of people in our communities world. Okay, uh, this is the end of our discussion for uh, hazards in the Philippines. No, thank you for listening. I hope that uh, you learn from this topic, and I hope that this those learnings you can uh, you can implement or you can do it during disasters or during if we experience disasters in a certain areas in our community. Okay, thank you and God bless.